Hi everyone. In this video, I am going to explain my overpaint. This overpaint is based on a patron's original. This is the original. And in this segment, I am just going to explain myself, why I made the changes I made, my reasoning behind it. And at the end of the segment, you're going to find a timelapse video with the process itself. Okay? Let's start with something very general, very foundational, and that's the proportions. The proportions in the original were off. For a dainty female character, uh, you want to keep a shoulder that is rather narrow compared to the skull. To be more specific, I like to keep that proportions, the length of the shoulder, two heads wide to 2.5 at most. Um, this one, the original, is almost three heads wide if you count the crosser part of the shoulders. And that's one of the first things I changed. You're going to notice that in the time lapse video. Another thing I changed at the start was the neck. The neck was too wide for the skull, and that's because partially because of the rendering. The decision of making the neck overtly soft play against the topology of the neck. Okay, to be more specific with that, you have to keep in mind that the neck is wide at the top. Why is wide at the top? It's wide at the top because the insertion point of the neck is behind the ears. Okay, you can see partially the right ear, the one at your left, and based on that, I am using this ellipse. I am laying down that ellipse that marks the the top plane of the neck. The bottom plane, in contrast, is going to be very narrow. Okay, you can see that it's very apparent even with those ovals. But if we go back to the original, the issue is that that sense of proportion is lost. It's maybe there, but the problem is that you are not conveying that to the viewer. I make sure that it is conveyed in the overpaint because the shadow shape. For example, this shadow shape here, the one that is very V-like, that marks the bottom of the neck. And that's in comparison to the shadow shape that is created by the drop shadow of the head, is going to keep that proportion of the ovals. You're going to see this shadow shape that is big and this other shadow shape that is small, that gives that wide, narrow, dynamic hierarchy. Okay. Speaking of hierarchy, let's move to the hair. Okay. The original, I think, uses the more realistic proportion, the more realistic design of the remakes. I have not played the games, neither the original nor the remakes, but I noticed that, and I went back and found out that the original model, the one from the PS1 version, has a very interesting, has a very unique, very characteristic shape to it, and I like to keep that. I wanted to use that in the overpaint. Okay, you can see that the left segment is taller, is very pointy, is very 90s anime, and the other one, in contrast, is very short. The shape also changes, is less pointy, and if you notice that that is implemented in the overpaint. Okay, it's obviously not implemented one to one because you have to balance things out. I didn't want to lose the realistic sense the original was going for, but I wanted to give it some flair, okay, some accent. And that's important because that creates hierarchy. That tells the viewer, oh, this segment here is more important, more emphasized than this one. And you only use that, you only achieve that, sorry, by contrast. Okay. The problem of using very even feathers is that it's like the gaze, okay, the viewer gaze goes from segment to segment, not focusing on any of them because they are very equal, they are very even. Okay, here you see some hierarchy. Okay, that creates an interesting visual point. So, okay, let's move to something else. Let's move to contrast. Okay, um, by contrast, I mean that your shadow shape have to be very differentiated from your light shape, and that's achieved in the original. You can see, especially here in the drop shadow of the hair against the forehead, and the drop shadow of the head falling on the neck. However, the issue is that that's not enough, okay? You need more hard edges. You need more defined shadow shape to define the planes of the head, the neck, the shoulder, etc. Um, let's go back to the overpaint. And if I switch on and off, you're going to see that those are preserved. The drop shadow of the strand, the drop shadow of the head, but there is another drop shadow that is not present in the original, and that's the one of the nose, the bridge of the nose to be more specific. Okay, that drop shadow fuses with the shadow shape of the cheek, which is present in the original. The original has a form shadow, but it's not creating that dynamic of fusing together with the drop shadow of the bridge of the nose. That's that's the reason why you don't see the pointy end of that drop shadow. It should be there, but it is being lost with the form shadow of the cheek. That creates a triangle of light, and I speak of this on my past video. That creates a Rembrandt triangle. That's the name that is given to it. The Rembrandt triangle is created as a byproduct of that dynamic of shapes of shadow shape I just explained. Okay, so you can see how that is missing in the original, and that's another point of contrast that is not implemented. Um, the shadow shapes and themselves is another point that I feel was a missing opportunity, and I explained part of that with the base of the neck. That base of the neck is telling me many things. It's telling me that it's narrow at the bottom, and it's also telling me that there is a hierarchy. And let's create another layer for this. Um, you have the base of the neck here. You have the shapes of the neck muscle here. You are already seeing that the base of the neck is behind those neck muscles, and you are seeing the shoulder too. Okay, that's telling the viewer that there is an order. First, behind, at the back, there is the base of the neck, then the neck muscles, and then the shoulder. And if we go back to the original, you're going to see that there is a hint of that, especially with the clavicle, but it's not very apparent. The base of the neck is totally lost, and the pit that is created by the two clavicle segments is missing. Okay, so that's why shadow shapes are important. That's why creating contrast is important. Okay. Okay, let's move to or let's go back to the hair, but in a different way. Okay. Uh, there is a definition that is lost with the tendrils of the head, sorry, of the hair, that I wanted to recover. Okay, I will say that drawing hair is like drawing smooth at some point. Okay, um, there is this, for example, that brush that exists in Procreate. That's very useful for creating hair. That does not mean that that brush is obligatory to describe hair. Obviously, it is not. However, you have to keep in mind that the sense of the hair is similar to that sense of smooth. Okay, uh, and to make that more apparent, I decided to create. these segments, these tendril segments, these wavy uh, parts of hair, using something very basic that does not use the brush, the smooth brush. I just show you. I only use that smooth brush at some segment to create some flare. But what is important is the shapes you decide to use to render the hair. For example, if the tendrils of Aerith were to be more uh, were to be longer, I could create one here, for example. And this is going to be very very quick. I'm not going to be to have the same care of the overthing, but I hope you get the uh, is going to show you something. Okay. um, I have a shape. That shape is enough to render the hair. Sorry, I can create some rebel strands of hair here. I am just using one value, and the shape is taking form. It's starting to describe the hair. At this point, I have something that continues the tendrils that make them longer. I just need a shadow shape first, and I am being very deliberate with the ends of the borders of that shadow shape. A corner that in this case is being described by the highlight, and I just remember that I use a 6B brush. That's why it's not looking like this. Okay, that's better. Um, and I am already having something that looks very close to what was left, what was laid on the overpaint, on the final overpaint. So the lesson here is that you should focus on silhouette, on shapes. Okay, once you have a shape that is very characteristic, you can lay down the shadow side of that silhouette of that shape. That alone is going to give you a 3D form, and you can go and make a highlight, make a corner, and that's going to uh, emphasize the form that you already have. Okay, and then you can find some brushes in your favorite drawing painting app. For me, is sorry, is Procreate. Um, to create some accents, some details that are not foundational, okay, but are going to help to convey that sense of her to the viewer. Okay, let's move to subsurface scattering. This is something that I cannot promise you is going to be happening in reality, but it's something that I find very interesting. The contrast between the shadow shape and the light shape when you are using that shadow shape to create subsurface scattering is very interesting to me, especially in the shadow shape. In the shadow side, because it's going to create more contrast there. You can see that the subsurface scattering is there in the light side, but it's not that striking. It's more striking here. Okay, subsurface scattering is when light uh, travels through an object that is going to diffuse that light inside. Okay, so as I said, it's something that I just invented. I don't know if this kind of material even can create this level of subsurface scattering, but that's the beauty of art. You don't have to be totally faithful to reality. You can pick and choose some pieces of reality. You can totally eliminate some pieces of reality, as I eliminated almost the entirety of the filter here. And I am digressing a bit, sorry, but I just wanted to emphasize that. Okay, it's not in the original, and that's okay. You can create an amazing portrait without the use of surface scattering. I just find that is making the portrait more interesting. Okay, uh, I spoke of the filtering because I find that the filtering is something that you can omit almost entirely from portrait because it's creating an island of shapes, of shadows. And I have explained it in past videos that shadows have to be fused as much as possible. You have to avoid having an archipelago of shadow shapes that are isolated. And having that single shadow shape in the filter is a bit, I don't know, it does not quite feel right with me. You might not be of this opinion. It's okay. But I hope you can see that by fusing shadow shapes, I am creating a stronger unity. Because when I see this in the thumbnail, that already looks like a portrait. I want to zoom and I want to see in at full size, at full resolution, because that shadow shape is already conveying that that sense of three dimensionality. Okay, that's creating a stronger shadow side. Okay, to my portrait. So that's the reason why I omit the filters often, because I don't want to have isolated shadows through my piece. Okay, I try to fuse my shadows as much as possible. Okay. Okay. Speaking of creating a stronger unity, I changed the eyes because I wanted to align the light direction with my eyes. The problem in the original is that you have this highlight, and this might occur as a secondary light reflects on the eyes, but the eyes are also missing their main highlight. That is the one given by the light direction. So the light basically is going to enter on the eyeball. That's the main highlight you see here. That's the one that is produced by the lights of ray touching the eyeball. And the secondary one that is more diffuse, that is weaker, is going to be the pupil, sorry, the iris that is taking that ray of light and is diffusing like it was a plate. And I have explained this already in the past video, uh, and I don't want to go a bit too much in detail because uh, that's going to take a while. But I hope you can see the main highlight is going to be stronger. It's going to be like a point, very sharp, and the secondary highlight is the one that is going to be diffused across the plate-like nature of the iris. Okay. Okay, if you want more details about that, you can watch the previous two videos. Speak of this in more detail. But, at this point, I feel like I am repeating a bit too much myself about that specific. So that's why I am skipping a bit about that explanation. Okay. Okay, I think that's about it. Those are the most important elements uh, I changed to get from the original to the overpaint. And the thing about contrast, I already explained, but just to be more emphatic, you can see that the highlights and the shadow shape in the hair are more contrasty in the overpaint too. Okay, here for example, I am using those highlights to create a corner on those banks, those strands, and where I am not creating a corner, even then, I am creating enough contrast to create a material that is going to be different from the skin. Okay, you can see that the skin, the light side, obviously, the light side is low contrast, but the hair, even in the light side, the contrast is higher than the skin. That is telling the viewer, this material here is different than this material here, and this one is also different. Okay, so yeah, I hope this was useful to you. If you feel that you will benefit from my reviews, I have a critique tier in my Patreon that includes 4 reviews per month, and the review is like this: it's a PSD where you have the overview and the notes and the timeless video. The one you are seeing right now, the one you are watching right now, this one is optional. This one is when I tell my patron, oh, I think the open is very useful. It shows some important points. Would you allow me to do a voiceover video explaining a bit further the changes I made? If you allow me to share this video, I am going to make it. I am going to explain myself further, but it's not always the case. Sometimes I do the review, and in the notes in the overpay is very apparent why I made those changes. Okay, it is also the case that maybe you don't want to be shared, and it's totally okay. You are going to get the overpay itself, the notes, and the time-lapse video. So this one is optional. Is if you allow me to share it, and in exchange, I do the voiceover video. Okay, just to be clear, not every review. In short, not every review is going to be shared. It's also the case that I don't share every review because I do a lot of non-safe for work arts myself, and I review also a lot of non-safe for work art in my Patreon, and those I cannot share here in social media. So even if you don't need the reviews. I have another tiers that allow you to see process video. It allows you to see this kind of voiceover videos when they are non safe for work and they stay on the Patreon. And you get all my other rewards. I post a lot on Patreon. I put a lot of effort there. I am updating 3 to 4 times per week. So I try to put a lot of effort to give a lot of value because I really like the model. Okay. So yeah, that's about it. If you have any questions, let me know. And I hope this has been useful. Bye for now.